In the interest of honoring everyone who got on right at 3 o'clock, we'll go ahead and get started, and those who join afterwards can catch up. We plan to share these slides, so you'll have an opportunity to review them at your own convenience after the workshop. Again, I want to welcome everyone to our Wellbeing Workshop. I'm Kimberly Freeman. I'm the Associate Dean and Chief Diversity Officer in USC Dornsife. And joining me today will be Disha Mahindra, who is the Director of Diversity Initiatives and Community Relations in USC Dornsife, and also our Associate Vice Provost, Eileen Rosenstein, who represents the Office of Campus Wellbeing and Intervention. And we'd like to, on behalf of the team, we'd like to welcome you to this first of hopefully more workshops like this. We recognize that these are trying and unusual times, and so what we are offering is a space for us to just consider some of the things that will keep us healthy and whole throughout this crisis that we're all experiencing. I'm going to mention a few housekeeping items again. You'll be muted throughout the workshop, and again, we hope to have future workshops that are more interactive, but for the purposes of just getting the information out today and making sure that we provide an overview, we thought that it would be best to set this up more like a webinar, but future workshops can be much more intimate and conversational as we design them based on the feedback we receive from this one. So remember to use the chat feature to enter information, and we'll be monitoring that chat throughout the session. We also have 3 short poll questions at the end of the session that will help us gather instant feedback for planning purposes. And we intend to send out a longer survey with our post-workshop email that will hopefully give you a chance to provide more direct feedback on how we can craft future sessions. Now, I'd like to begin with an excerpt from a New York Times article that I read actually just a few minutes ago this afternoon. It was from I guess, the person who does the podcast Grammar Girl. And so it says, Mignon Fogarty was a few weeks into quarantine when she got into the shower with her glasses on. And I laughed when I read that first sentence because I actually did that the other day too. And quickly had to get them off before I broke them and had a situation where I would have to go to the doctor and get stitches. The author and host of the podcast Grammar Girl shared the experience on Twitter, where dozens of people replied with their own stress-induced scatterbrain moments, forgetting their own phone numbers, washing faces with hair conditioner, spooning powdered baby formula into coffee makers instead of coffee. I've been noticeably forgetful and I'm not sleeping well, Fogarty said of life in a self-isolation from her home in Reno, Nevada. In last night's dream, I was responsible for taking care of a child who kept touching dirty things in public and rubbing his hands on my face while I sat there thinking about how our whole family was going to die. Fogarty was not alone. As the corona crisis spreads across the United States, many states and cities have ordered residents to self-isolate in order to slow the virus. As a result, millions of people now find themselves cut off from their normal routines and support networks, while also homeschooling children, managing households in lockdown, caring for loved ones, and grappling with serious fears about the health and safety of their community. Stress is high, and healthy outlets for it are few. It's a situation that seems practically made to undermine mental health. So that leads us to why we're here today. As you can imagine, as the lead for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our college, I spend a lot of time thinking about and working on connection and belonging for some of our most vulnerable, marginalized populations. And from the research, we know that fostering a sense of belonging and connection is foundational to well-being. This desire to keep us all connected in our new physically and socially distant reality is what has led us to partner, and by us I mean the Office of Diversity in Dornsife, with Eileen Rosenstein, who represents Campus Wellbeing and Crisis Intervention in her Office of Campus Wellbeing and Education. So I'd now like to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about. I'll give some quick introductions of our speakers today. Then we'll have an outline of the presentation, followed by the content, which are tips and strategies on how to get through and practice well-being. And then we'll do a glossary just to make sure we're all using the same terms and understanding what we mean by certain things that we say. And we'll have a discussion led by Eileen, but also this will be your opportunity using the chat feature to perhaps put your questions in that you'd like for us to answer. After that, we'll have some final thoughts and offer some supplemental resources, and then we should be done. But this by no means is the end. It's just the beginning. So I want to remind you that we are opening up the dialogue. This is our safe and creative space to really think about some of the things that have been pressing upon us from a well-being standpoint over the last 3.5 weeks that we have all been working remotely. And we want to make sure that we are honoring the well-being that needs to take place in order for us to function and thrive. So I've already told you who I am, but just to give you a quick reference to my bio on the web page, I'm really principally tasked with being the lead diversity officer for the school, as well as running our strategy. So those are my principal functions, are to be our lead with faculty, staff, and students on matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to run the strategy for our college. We also have Disha Mahindra, who works for me. She's our director, and she's also helping with implementing the strategy. Disha also has a program called DICE that focuses on diversity, equity, inclusion, and cultural awareness, and she's working on that program with student affairs. And last but not least, Eileen Rosenstein is our featured speaker. Eileen is the Associate Vice Provost for Campus Wellbeing and Education. She is a clinical psychologist who has over 30 years of experience. She's worked at another premier university before arriving at USC to run several student health programs. And now she is coordinating well-being across the entire enterprise, focusing on making us all healthy and whole as employees, as faculty members, as students, and helping us to heal, adapt, and thrive. So Eileen, I'm gonna turn, or actually Disha, I'm gonna turn over the mic to you to give us an overview. Oh, sorry. See, we practiced this and then I already made a mistake. We're gonna do a reflection because we wanna make sure that we just take a pause and take a breath. So I would ask, out of the 62 people who are on this call, if you would just take a minute or two at your desk or wherever you're working to answer one of the 3 questions, or if you are inclined, you can answer all 3, but to yourself, answer one of these questions. Number 1, what self-care techniques are you using? Number 2, what have you found to be most difficult to deal with during these challenging times? And number 3, wait, let me get rid of that. What are you doing for fun? And if you are so inclined, you can put your answers in the chat. So we'll take 2 minutes. Okay, it looks like we're getting a lot of great responses. Disha, do you want to read a few of those?
Yeah, definitely. So it looks like we have a lot of yoga going on and some baking and cooking, a lot of kitchen experimentation. I've also been participating in that. I saw someone posted, the answers are coming in fast. I saw someone posted that they've been watching Some Good News by John Krasinski from The Office. I too have been following that. It's very fun. Some movies. A lot of people are doing some reading and movies. And a theme I'm seeing a lot is routine, sticking to a routine, having a schedule, making sure you're showering, getting up every day after you get up every day, and keeping to a schedule and making sure you're having breaks for your meals.
Great. Yeah. Well, I appreciate everyone for rapidly answering that question in the chat. Those are all really good things. I just have to tell you a funny story. I have on my house slippers. Like every morning, I can't function throughout the day without putting on the same pair of slippers. It's like my comfort zone. And I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do when I have to go back to wearing real shoes? So I'm really thinking about like the transition back to quote normal and wearing work clothes, because I'm used to wearing my house slippers, and they actually provide me a lot of safety and security when I put them on. So anyway, that's just my way of practicing self-care. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Disha now.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar names because I can't see everyone's faces, but I want to thank you all for joining us today. We saw a need in doing this as we've been through about 4 weeks of remote environments and many more to continue most likely. And so we wanted to use this as a platform to discuss wellness, as this is a need that we believe has arisen. And this will be, like we said, the first of many future discussions. So what we'll be doing today is providing an overview of some tips, strategies, terms, as Kimberly mentioned earlier. And our content expert, Dr. Eileen Rosenstein, will be sharing that with us all. And our outcome, our expected outcome, our takeaways for you that we want you to walk away with are with some tools and strategies to curb any negative well-being feelings, and just some strategies to find some balance as we're going through this pandemic.
Great.
And keep your answers coming in the chat. I'm monitoring it, so if you have questions, I will do my best to not miss them and make sure that they get answered.
Thank you, Disha. That's really helpful for you to give us that framework for the presentation today, and also to monitor the chat. Okay, we're going to move on now to our featured speaker, Dr. Eileen Rosenstein. Uh-oh. You can see I'm not as skilled with the slides. I should have asked Disha to do this part. It would have come out better. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Eileen Rosenstein, you're up.
Thanks, Kimberly. Thank Disha. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. I know these are really challenging times, and when we're not in the office, many people are finding things very distracting, isolating. That virtual collaboration can be extremely challenging, and balancing all these parts of our lives can be tough. So when Kimberly and Disha asked me to do this, the question that came up was, what's well-being, and how do we keep our well-being during challenging times? And so I'm using a framework that comes out of positive psychology of what is well-being. Oftentimes when we think about well-being, we think of things like sleep and eating well and exercising. Those are all important self-care. But the research really shows that these 5 components are really what matter for people. So when we say positive emotions, what we're really talking about there is that we are able to have pleasure. This can be very difficult if you have a partner who has lost a job, or you're in fear of losing your job, or you know someone who's sick or has passed. These are difficult to have moments that we put in pleasure. But but it's important to have some sense of what that is. So what I suggest to all of you is to kind of take the time to write down 10 things that give you pleasure, and they could be simple things. My cup of coffee in the morning and a hot shower give me tremendous amount of pleasure. The other thing that goes with pleasure or positive emotions is how do we deal with negative emotions like grief or anxiety? And there's a way of looking at this. And you know, in times that you can't control what's going out there, I noticed on the chat that some people brought, like, watching the news can be amazingly stressful. Really looking at our thoughts and our behaviors and really asking ourselves, is this helping me or harming me by doing this behavior? At some point I had to turn off the news and limit it because it was just agitating me so much. That's just me personally. But, you know, again, what's this balance between positive? I want to stay in reality. I want to stay connected. I want to know the information, but I also want to limit those things that may not be so helpful. So the positive emotions is really kind of getting joy, and where can you get that from? And spend some time thinking of that. Engagement really means focus, and this is when you lose yourself in something. For me, this has been really difficult because I'm in a process of writing a book, and what I call my local office, which is the Starbucks down the hill, I can't go to anymore. But that was a place that I could really focus for some reason, even though there was all this commotion around me, and I could spend 7 hours being engaged with my work. Some of us get engaged with a puzzle or an online thing, you know, whatever it is. What the research shows is having that focus is really important. And being that many of us are describing that we're quite distracted, try to think about, is there things that you can do to make the things not as challenging and less stressful, bringing it down to more comfort level, or are things in some ways boring? One of the difficulties is we have to have enough anxiety to get us motivated to do things. So getting the right amount of kind of energy and anxiety, so upping the challenge of things. And so it may depend on what you work on first that can get you in that zone, but you really should try to do that on a daily basis. Relationships are very important. In fact, the research says that this is really, of all the factors, probably the most important one. And it doesn't mean that you have to have tons of relationships, but you really should think about, do you have one person, at least one person in your life that you could turn to at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're flipping out about something, and there would be no judgment, that they would listen to you, that you could honor their advice. And when I do workshops on this, people come up with people like their pastor, their spouse, their sibling, a childhood friend. And so think about, do I have that person, and do I feel like I can take risks? At this time, one of the things that I'm finding really kind of beautiful is that I'm hearing people are reaching out to people that they haven't spoken to in years. A nursery school friend reached out to me to say, how are you doing? We haven't been in contact, and I think of you often, and from nursery school. So, you know, in that way, I think it's really important that we take risk, which is not always easy to do, and reach out to people in this time. What's meaningful to us? What matters to you? Remembering those values, and what strengths are you using? So, you know, one of the things I value is humor. And so it's real important to me that I have times during the day I'm connecting with people in a humorous way, kind of going back and forth. Figure out for yourself what matters, what gives you meaning. You know, I had a friend who said, you know, I used to think family was my value, but now being in a house with 5 other people, you know, I'm not having such a good time with, you know, on the value scale, they're kind of going down. And I think it is tough to be, and so negotiating boundaries and areas and what's okay, and connecting in ways that feel good, because, you know, making that special time for what matters to you is really important. And then accomplishment. Accomplishment is for accomplishment's sake. It doesn't necessarily help other people. So I do a Sudoku puzzle every night. It doesn't help the world, which is one of my values, but it gives me a lot of pleasure, but it also makes me feel accomplished. But there's accomplishments that you can do. And it doesn't mean just your to-do list. It could be also, how do I want to be today? How do I want to accomplish, do I want to have more connection today? And each of us have different amounts of this that we need on a daily basis. So some of us may need more positive emotion and pleasure in our lives, and others may really need a significant amount of accomplishment. So I think that's one way of looking at this and kind of judging yourself and what do I need, and being thoughtful about how we spend our time can be helpful. Next slide. So oftentimes people think of well-being as self-care. And so I did this, there may be students on this as well, but I did this particularly for faculty and staff, but I'll include students as well. So we can go to the next slide. Obviously this is saying you have to take care of yourself if you're going to take care of others or even be there. And so I think as faculty and staff, we have to set reasonable expectations of what we can do. I teach, and my class is actually feeling, they're all graduating, they're graduate students, and this is not how they thought they were going to end their career. And definitely not a way of saying goodbye to each other or to the program. And so in some ways I was trying very hard to connect with them over Zoom. And there were certain things I could do to help, but then I had to realize that, no, this is realistic. Their anxiety is going to be up. This is, part of it. It's natural. It's normal. It makes sense. We do have a threat, and anxiety comes when we're threatened. And the other piece is there's only so much we can do. There's certain things we're just going to have to grieve, and maybe grieve together. So my role as a faculty member is very different than my role as a therapist or my role as an associate VP. So knowing my role, I think particularly as faculty, but as staff as well, is I need to know the resources. I need to be there for others. I need to listen active in a way that's not judgmental, and then get them to the right resources. We'll go over the resources at the end of this webinar, so you have them, and you'll have this in the PowerPoint that gets sent out to you, but to really know your role. And then the other thing is to reflect on, did I do my best, and does it match my values? Not everything has to be your best. And sometimes good enough is a really good concept, that sometimes we can just do good enough, and that's fine. And then other times it's like, this really matters to me. So you really want to do your best. And I think that's important to kind of, as we do things, to consciously, make these decisions. Is it okay that, as I'm sitting here in my slippers, in terms of that I'm not decked out as if I'm going to work, to really ask ourselves those kind of questions. And, comfort may be, a higher value at this point than, looking professional, and that's okay. But to really kind of look at, what do I really want to do my best on, and to intend on that, and then really, how do I motivate myself to get that? And the other thing that's different is, when we go into work, oftentimes we run into people, we have small chats, we have some people who we're very close to perhaps at work, and we're missing that. We need to intentionally do that. And so consult with colleagues or supervisors about your feelings, plans, expectations. Maybe have more meetings, formal meetings set up in your group to really sit and talk to one another. And then, be good to yourself. Use the resources. Some people, really, they may be afraid about food. Do they have enough? What's going on? All the way up to, like, it's okay to take time during this stressful time to relax, or to watch, a show that may be, a vice of some sort, long as you're not harming yourself. These are important things to do, and to be self-compassionate, which I just want to talk about that. The research really points out that having self-compassion is essential for us. And Kimberly, if we can go to the next slide, that I'm not sure if there we So part of it is, that's it. To practice forgiveness. What the literature really points in terms of forgiveness is oftentimes people develop much more depression, anxiety, these kind of even eating disorders when they're really hard on themselves. And that doesn't mean not to self-improve and to be realistic and to listen, because we want what's called a growth mindset, where we understand that this is all part of learning. That's how we approach things. That's learning. That it's not like you're automatically excellent at something. So if we're not good at reaching out at somebody, forgive yourself that you may not do it in the best way, and learn from that and kind of practice to get it in the way that you want to. The other thing that we have 20 years of research is expressing gratitude. That is not just with each other, which I think is important to say how much we value each other, but there are things like gratitude journals, writing just briefly 3 things you're grateful for each day, really has shown that people get a better sense, and people even who have had moderate depression have found tremendous relief over time when practicing this for several weeks. So it's something to incorporate, that you might want to look at this, because it's a way of kind of being, it's not Pollyanna-ish, it's like what really matters, and it kind of clarifies, because the things we do have control about is how we think about things and how we behave. And so we really want to be able to do the things that give us, a sense of well-being. The other thing is find the right level of generosity. There's a lot of research that giving actually creates more well-being than getting. And I had a colleague at Penn who's in the business school, Warren School, that also found that companies that gave more, that had people who were givers, also were much more successful in the long run, even though they experienced a lot of discomfort along the way, because there were people who did not match them or come back to give and be generous back. But over time, what the generosity does is, what's the right generosity level for you? It's different for each person, and for some people, giving is very easy and doesn't feel taxing. For others, it's really hard. Many of us during this time are caretakers, caretakers for elderly, perhaps delivering food to your parents, and for others, it's having your children around or a friend. I know that I'm checking in with my friends who are single and isolated by themselves. My cousin Ellie said she can go days without talking with somebody. So kind of that feels good to me, and it doesn't drain me. And I think that's something to pay attention to on a daily basis. What gives you energy and renews you? Because these well-being markers are things that we have found actually give you more energy, more focus, really regenerate and give you resilience during difficult times. And then finally, be mindful. If we go to the next slide, please. Mindful means being present, but it also means it's not just a sense of, focusing on a word or doing that. It's really paying attention to, wait, what am I feeling now? And what do I want to do about that? And just kind of letting it go, not judging the feeling. Oftentimes, many of us feel worse because we're upset that we're anxious, or we get anxious about being anxious. And so sometimes just letting the feeling be is a way of just noticing it. These are other definitions that you can use later on if you want. And then if we can go to the next slide. We're going to go into the discussion part now, but I'm hoping that these are little tips. Campus Wellbeing and Crisis Intervention actually does seminars and goes much more deeper in each of these to give tools, but oftentimes what we like to do is have conversations with people to understand kind of where they're coming from so we can address. There's so many tools out there. And that's the other thing. Take the time, because this is a time, you know, we all think we have so much time, right? People say, it's so funny, I thought I would have all these projects done or do these things as I was home. And that's not happening for people, but again, prioritize what is meaningful to you. So I'm going to turn this over to Kimberly to start the discussion part.
Well, thank you, Eileen. And I have to say, this is really like a fun experiment, but it's also giving me pause, because as soon as you started talking and I was like trying to advance the slides, which was, you know, kind of fun, the UPS driver came to my house to drop off a package, and so I'm like, oh no, I need to go sign for it. But I guess in these days we don't have to sign for anything. So there's a package waiting on my front doorstep now that I will get after this webinar. So it's that kind of like adjustment, you know, to our workday. And also, I was thinking about my comment about the slippers. I think what's like not jarring, because this is not anything that should be jarring, seems so minuscule, but I'm used to wearing shoes to work. You know what I mean? Like, I associate shoes with work. So it's almost thinking like, maybe I should just put my shoes on, and then it'll change my mindset around my job, because I'm used to dressing up. I'm old school like that. I think I just have that kind of formality. So this new normal of working in your house where you might not wear business attire, it is a little bit of an adjustment for me. I'll say it that way. So what kinds of things are you doing to cope, Eileen?
So there we go. So for me, the hardest thing adjustment was, it felt like I lost my whole routine. And so one of the things that I do every morning is I do meditate and I do exercise. So I start off my day, and then I think I shared this with both you and Disha. I have this thing called intent, where I sit there and say, how do I want to be today? Who do I want to be? So it's not just my to-do list, but it's also sitting there and kind of going back and saying, you know, that I want to, you know, have joy, more joy today, or I want to be more productive today, and then translating that. That's been really helpful to me. And taking the first day that I started doing this a lot on being, I have 7 hours of chat time on Zoom. My back was killing me. I was like, oh geez, sitting. So I'm standing, moving. I'm making sure every 25 minutes to, you know, 50 minutes, I'm up moving. I think it's real important to do that. So that's what I'm doing. What are you doing, Kimberly and Disha?
You can go first, Disha.
I've been doing yoga, and I've been doing a lot of stretching because my back also hurts quite a bit. I actually took this chair from my husband's office because he's not using it. He's also working from home. So I was working on a broken chair, which was making it even worse, but getting this chair has been really great for me. Stretching, I live by a planner. And so I have like dedicated stretching breaks written in just to make sure that I'm fitting them in between meetings and just getting to move also.
It's funny because we're all talking about getting up and moving around, and the package that's waiting for me is a brand new office chair, because I realized if we're going to go into, you know, June or however long we're going to be quarantined, I have to really think more seriously about ergonomics, because, you know, working at home when you have the opportunity to go into an office is different from your home becoming your office. So I really need to redesign my workspace so it's really functional, so that I'm not going to get any of these injuries because I'm sitting in the wrong kind of chair all day. So that's the package that just came.
So I noticed on the chat that somebody brought up the sense of feeling guilty of doing these kind of self, help kind of movements, or, you know, taking time. And I think that's important to look at. When we feel guilt, often guilt is a way of saying, I wish I could do X, but I'm not doing that. So it's a should. It's like, I really wish I could. And sometimes under these circumstances, we aren't able to do because our minds and bodies are just working differently in this period of time, and we're really adjusting to change. So again, if you can allow yourself to say to yourself, yeah, I wish I could be this way, but I am this way now. And are there ways that I can become the way, or is that really just a should? And, are there conflicting reasons why I'm not doing what I would want to be doing? Is it a want or a should? A want is different. If it's a want, then you have to figure out what are the barriers. And if the barriers are real, then basically, you have to listen to them. So we're talking about physical, that it hurts our back. Well, I would love to just sit there and be able to work for hours at a time, but that's not going to happen. So I need to take care of and pay attention to those signals.
Those are all really great. I think it's important too, like some of the experts are saying, you really need to get outside. I saw someone saying in the chat that they take walks every day. Maybe not today with the rain, but even just a 10-minute, walk around the block or something, I think is really rejuvenating. So I've been trying to also incorporate like yoga and exercise, using some of the Instagram and the Zoom exercise, the different platforms that you can use online to find exercise classes, since we're not able to go to a gym. Or I like to do group exercise. Before all of this, I used to go to a Zumba class over at the gym inside the USC Village, and so I'm kind of missing that camaraderie, but trying to recreate it by doing these online exercise classes is something that I think is a coping skill.
And I want to bring up routines coming up on that it's difficult for people to get a routine. Some of us are very good at developing routines. That's just even in our daily, but other of us have trouble with that kind of regulation. And we all have different paces, and you have to pay attention to your pace. Some of us are steady as we go kind of people. Others kind of do a whole bunch of energy and then have to retreat and regroup again. So pay attention to how you normally work, and then the routine may have to match your pace. So you may work in spurts as a person, or you may be somebody who I saw that some people said they're treating it like they get to work at 8:30 and they leave at 5. And that's a great boundary, because one of the things that people are saying to me, I don't even know what day it is anymore, because each day they're still kind of working the same on Saturday and Sunday. So taking real time off does help, but if your pattern is like, no, that it's better to spread it out and I kind of mosey around and get to certain things, that's okay too. That's just a different pace of how you're approaching this. And the routine may not look exactly the same as it did prior when you were going, to USC to work.
Absolutely. Okay, well, it looks like we're getting a lot of good feedback and questions in the chat room. Disha, do you have any others you want us to handle before we move to the closing part of our presentation?
I think we're going to be covering a couple of these other comments as we move forward with the mindfulness journaling. Some people have brought that up. I think something important to note about boundaries, and actually we were discussing this with our team between Kimberly Flavio and I a couple days ago, or actually at the end of last week, is what are we doing to separate the week from the weekend to make sure that we're getting those dedicated days of rest before we jump back into the new work week. So a question that I want to pose to everybody to start thinking about on this Friday Eve is, what are you looking forward to for the weekend that's going to separate you from your working week?
Thank you. And I think that one of the things that I'm doing, in addition to, getting the right ergonomic home office furniture and wearing appropriate footwear, is really trying to think about the big picture and what's happening for, from a equity standpoint, what's happening for people who can't work from home. I mean, even the term work from home, I think is troubling or challenging. It really does suggest something that everyone isn't allowed to do. So in my reflections every day, I try to think about what's happening here, particularly in LA City and County, with our homeless population, with victims of domestic violence, with people who are insecure from a food standpoint. So I just kind of run through some of the things that I feel like I'm privileged and am not worrying about for my own self, but what worries me about my fellow citizens here in the city of LA. That's actually, I think, a big part of my coping and how I deal with this new routine that we now have as a result of the crisis. So we're going to move on because it's now 3:44, and if we have a little time at the end, we'll spend some more time in the chat. There might be some more stuff coming up, but I want to honor our time and make sure that we get through all the slides. So one of the things that Eileen had suggested is that we use these 6 questions daily, and they come from the Greater Good Center at UC Berkeley. So the first question is, what am I grateful for today? And again, just as I was saying, you know, I'm grateful that I have hot food, I have a roof over my head, and that I'm able to provide not only for myself, but for people in my family who need things that they might not be able to get on their own, especially during this crisis. And then, you know, when you're checking in on people, who are you making connections with, and just checking to make sure that they have what they need. I've reconnected with friends all the way, you know, as far as the East Coast, friends that live in the DC area, friends that live in North Carolina, family in the South. And I think it's important to not only check in on people, but to connect with them in ways that you haven't in times past. So think about students. I've texted students and emailed some students that I've worked with this school year to see how they're doing through all of this. I just encourage us to be mindful of that. And then what expectations of normal am I letting go of today? Eileen will touch upon that a little bit more later, but that's a great question. How am I getting outside? A lot of people were talking about taking daily walks. How am I moving my body? I saw a lot of comments in the chat about exercise. And what beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? And just to use my own personal example, you can see it behind me, but I love art, and Cynthia St. James is actually a friend. And so I look at this painting every day as a way of cultivating beauty. So Eileen, this is your slide.
Yeah. So just some final thoughts here is that the impact and implication of technology, that this is the way that we're connecting with each other, is really quite different if you think about it. Although many of us may have FaceTime relatives who are living elsewhere or whatever, this is different, that this is the way that we're connecting. And the research is still somewhat out on how satisfying this is to some extent. And someone said in the chat that they felt guilty about this impulse about going out. Well, I think the impulse makes a lot of sense, because I'll share one of my kids who's 26 years old, my daughter, actually, like she said, Mom, I snuck out to a mall. Because she felt like she just needed to be, and she said it was totally desolate. And she said, I don't even know why I had this impulse. And she called and she said, I went back and, but she said this need to be part of a community was really what it came down to. And we had to talk about how to develop community in terms of technology. What's these communities going to be like? But it may not be, and this is what am I going to let go of today, that, that is not normal. It's not normal to not be able to go to a store and converse and just be around people. And so in some ways that means we're going to have to grieve that we're letting go of that's something that at this time we just can't do, and to kind of sit with that. And I wish there was a magic wand. I think many people feel like if they knew that if they only had 4 weeks of this to go, that they could even enjoy being home a little bit better, or, do that. But we're really on the edge of the unknown. We don't know where this is going to go. So it's really taking one moment at a time. And I noticed that many of you are using mindfulness as a way, to just kind of stay there, which hopefully is helpful for some. And the remote working balance, this is something I think we really need to look at, because it's not going to be the same. Some of us may be actually more productive this way, or even feel more well-being being home, and others of us are going to feel like this is just jarring. And so really kind of figuring out, what does this mean for you, and what makes you feel better. And then, is anyone part of a virtual community like a book and film? So LA, we don't have this, we might as well go to the resource list, but LA, by the way, LA County, the LA Times has a book club. And again, it may mean that we have to take risks to ask people, do you want to be part of a book club? Or friends are listening to music together and talking, having those kind of things. But if we go to some of the resources, this may help.
So we put together this is a very short list, and we're happy to share more virtual activities and virtual resources with you all after the webinar as well. But some ones that we wanted to include today were the Fisher Museum is offering some art activities for adults and for children as well. So it could be something to do if you have kids underfoot with you right now. Dornsife is still offering yoga hour every Monday at 12 p.m. There are many, many, many virtual museum tours available on Google right now, and this is linked. This is a link to it. If anyone is interested in doing meditation or learning about meditation, or already does meditation, is just looking for a new environment, the Chopra Center is currently offering 21 free days of meditation, and I believe it's valid until May 1st. I think they're on day 14 right now. I have not tried it yet, but I am planning to try it this weekend. And if anyone is interested in more yoga, YogaWorks has free yoga classes all day that are live, which has been really helpful. And we wanted to link the Greater Good Science Center as well, because there are so many good resources, activities, ideas about journaling, reflection, etc. on there. And then these are some articles and TED Talks that we wanted to specifically link you all to about how to be intentional about consuming news. Some COVID-19 mental health resources, and we touched upon growth mindset earlier in our webinar, and so we wanted to link to you a presentation and TED Talk that we shared with the Dornsife community at a couple of semesters ago. And Eileen's going to discuss some of the USC resources that we have, like Mindful USC and
Okay, Eileen, you're up.
So many of you know Mindful USC. Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Because it's saying my internet's connection's unstable.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So the app is easy to find. You just go into the App Store and look up Mindful USC. So that's happening. And there are drop-in groups all throughout the week. Like there's a self-compassion drop-in group at noon on Mondays. So if you just go to our website, you'll be able to see the listing of all the different, drop-in groups that are occurring. And I think it's really helpful. And often these drop-in groups are not just, you're not meditating the whole time. There's usually a 20-minute, but there's also talking. So looking at the chat question that came in about, joining different groups. These are groups of people that get together on a regular basis, a great option for you. Next, please. So AskAri, I want to tell, we created this at the Campus Wellbeing and Education. AskAri is an artificial intelligence, kind of like an Alexa, but limited to well-being for students. However, faculty and staff can go on. I have to tell you that myself and the other creator, Dr. Lindsay Christopherson, along with the Institute of Creative Technology, which has done the technology of it, we occasionally have trouble sleeping, and we'll go in and ask a question about sleep or, you know, looking at those things. And so Ari has been in development for a while. It's only been 2.5 years. We keep on reminding ourselves it took Google 7 years, but we want to release it to the community at this point, even though it's not a, well, you never finish with artificial intelligence, but at this point you can use the website. The app will be out in 3 weeks. Apple just approved it, so that's great. And we have a whole bunch of students now who are testing it. But if you want to go on and you know, play with Ari or ask questions, it has handouts and worksheets and videos. And resources, including a bibliography of where all this information is. So if you're very interested in reading in a particular area, like how, one of the questions that students asked, which was interesting, was we thought we'd talk about romantic relationships. Well, they actually came in and said, how do you make a friend? And we had to break that down, that students need to know how, and now many of us are in this way, how do we reach out to people and kind of reestablish relationships? So you feel free to use Ari, and we just ask if you're giving us feedback, because there's a feedback box, to say that you're staff or faculty, or if you're not a student, so we know that your questions, because we're finding faculty and staff ask different questions than students do. Next slide, please. Yeah. And then these are the various resources that are in the community. And I really want to bring up campus support and advocacy, which is now changed to campus support and intervention. CSI, they thought that was a cute name. But what's important about that, this is a place where people go, and any of us, faculty, staff, students, parents, can go and ask, here's a problem, where do I go? And get the right referral. So there's emergency funding, and I think for many faculty there's concerns about their students who may be having trouble. Our international students, some of our international students are not able to leave, so their housing situations are getting dicey, and so this is a place that really can work on those logistics. And so it's a really good resource. And if you know it's a mental health issue, though, go straight to the mental health places. All are having virtual connection. So for students, it's the Student Counseling and Mental Health Services. And for staff and faculty, we use the Center for Work and Family Life. The occupational faculty practice is fantastic. In fact, at 4 o'clock, they'll be having a workshop on ergonomics of how to set up your home offices. And they're going to repeat that again. So you could just contact them and I'm sure ask for that workshop. But they also do a life design piece. And they are able, again, also virtually to come and talk about how to make your spaces better for yourself. So, and if you're really having trouble and you want to develop better habits or better routines, that's a great place to reach out to. And then I want to bring up the Haven. Although this is mostly for students who have substance abuse issues, and they're still on campus. We have a residence for people who are in recovery, who are students, but also they are very in contact with what kind of meetings. One of the things that we're seeing in the field is that not only is domestic violence going up, but drinking and substance abuse is going up as well. And so for people who are worried, this is a good contact where you could call and kind of say, where are the virtual meetings that are going on? Because we have meetings on campus as well as, they're familiar with different meetings in the communities, not just AA, but also different support and resources.
You're muted.
I got it. Yeah. Well, this brings us to our last slide. And before we do this, I want to just do this quick poll. And let's see. Oh, look at this. Okay, let me share these results. So everyone found this workshop helpful. Let's see. Can you see that? Okay. Hopefully you could read that, that folks found this workshop helpful. We're going to send out a survey with our follow-up so that we can continue to build upon the experience that we started today. But before we close, I want to thank Disha and Eileen for their very capable hands in taking over this project and providing the content for these slides. The slides were prepared by Disha, so thank you very much for your hard work. And certainly, Eileen, you're doing some really important work on behalf of our entire campus community in campus well-being and education. And I want to say to all of the participants, thank you for understanding the importance of well-being as one of the elements of your work day, your new normal. And so we just want to let you know that we're here to support you and to provide you with whatever resources we have available at our fingertips. And if you have suggestions for us, please do share. You have all of our email addresses. We'll also share these slides so you can share them with others in your work groups. You can share them with people that you know on campus, but we really want to get this information out and let people know that well-being is its diversity, its inclusion, and it's something that is going to be very important to our success as we move forward. Eileen, do you have any final thoughts?
Just so that if people want to write with specific questions, and please fill out the survey. We'll be sending a Survey Monkey later to or a Qualtrics, because we really want to know what kind of workshops that you're wanting and be able to provide that. What would you want to deeper, and really having more chat connection. We weren't expecting so many people to sign up, and so hopefully in the future we'll be able to get people into chat rooms and really help each other, because I'm looking, and you all did wonderful suggestions, and it's really all of us together giving the information and helping each other. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.